born today will die with dementia. Every 3 seconds, another person is diagnosed with dementia. Worldwide, more than 150 million people will have dementia by 2050. Race Against Dementia supports early career scientists in their research around the world. Our scientists are supported by the RAD Leadership and Development Programme. That's interesting to hear that from you.
Race Against Dementia is going about it the right way, invested in new talent. I think there's a lot that we could learn. Being hungry for change is the way to go.
Let's beat dementia together.
Hello, and thank you very much for joining our live stream today. Good morning. I'm Adam Smith. I'm the host for today's event, and we have an exciting, informative session planned for you as we delve into the RAD Teams Funding Call, brought to you by Race Against Dementia and the Rosetrees Trust. Dementia research is an urgent and critical field, as I'm sure you'll know if that's why you're watching. And we have the privilege of sharing details about this groundbreaking funding opportunity that aims to revolutionise the fight against dementia. The Race Against Dementia Teams Funding Call provides a substantial £750,000 to support exceptional research projects over 5 years, allowing researchers to assemble talented teams and pursue innovative approaches. To guide us through this exciting initiative, we have representatives from both Race Against Dementia and Rosetrees Trust. Together, they bring a wealth of experience, knowledge, and a shared commitment to accelerating the progress in dementia research, and importantly, all the information you will need for this grant and how you can apply. I'm delighted to welcome Lydia Beaton, who is the Chief Operating Officer from Race Against Dementia, and Dr. Vineeth Rajkumar, who is the Head of Research at Rosetrees Trust. Hello.
Hi, Adam. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I should start by saying that I've got a technical problem here. I can't really hear them because we've got a terrible echo and the sound's coming out of these headphones, which I'll have to just put up now and again. So apologies if I keep looking like I'm distracted. During this live stream, we'll explore the key aspects of the RAD Teams Funding Call. We'll discuss the eligibility criteria, the application process, the incredible support available to successful applicants. Additionally, we'll address some of the common questions that potential applicants might have, helping you make an informed decision about whether this funding opportunity is right for you. But our goal for today is to provide you with all that information you might need to consider for applying for this unique opportunity. We want to empower you to take innovation and new ideas to the next level, surrounded by a team of talented researchers who share your passion for making a difference in dementia research. But before we dive into the specifics, I encourage you to have your questions ready. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session towards the end of the live stream. If you're watching in YouTube, you can post those in the comments, and if you're on Twitter, you can just tweet on the reply to the video at the bottom of the screen. You can ask our experts anything you'd like to know about the RAD Teams Funding Call. And I already have a long list of questions that people have sent me in advance. So I will try to listen to what you're saying and scribble them off so I don't ask a question you answer in your introductions. But without further ado, let's kick off our live stream information session and discover how you can become part of the RAD team and make a lasting impact on dementia research. Lydia, I believe you're going to go first, and you have some slides to give us an introduction to Race Against Dementia.
I am, that's right. So thank you very much for that introduction, Adam. That's brilliant. So I'll just share my screen so you can see a little more about what we're up to. So yes, just these are our contact details. So thanks, Adam. But after the event, I'm sure these will be shared in case there are any follow-up questions after today. So as Adam said, I am the Chief Operating Officer of Race Against Dementia, and we are a charity that exists to beat dementia. And just to give you an overview as to why we are here, so we're very privileged that Sir Jackie Stewart formed our charity back in 2016, and Many of you will know him as a 3-time world champion Formula One racing car driver. Prior to that, he also had a very successful Olympic shooting career. He is a natural campaigner, and he's always very much stood for a cause. And after he retired from driving in Formula One, he spent many years campaigning for safety on racing tracks. And some of the recommendations that he fought for are now, continue to exist today and save lives in motorsport. Rather tragically, his wife, Helen, who's pictured in that picture, was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia back in 2014. And Sir Jackie went around all of the top researchers and scientists and doctors around the world looking for something to do to help Helen as she faced this disease, and really shocked to find out that there wasn't, the sort of research that he was expecting, the breakthroughs that he was expecting, and that really spurred him to set up the charity in 2016. So Race Against Dementia now exists. We identify, fund, and guide our scientists across the globe. So we support scientists in various different countries. And we really encourage our researchers to use the Formula One connections, the Formula One world that Sir Jackie brings to the charity, to think about their research and disrupt their normal practices. Sir Jackie believes that some of the traits that you find across Formula One teams and drivers are things that could also be applied not only to the racetrack, but also to the laboratory. So Race Against Dementia so far has supported a fellowship scheme. Many people might be aware of the RAD fellowship scheme. We work in partnership with Alzheimer's Research UK in the UK. We have 17 fellows, but we also work supporting fellowships in Europe, the US, Australia, and South Africa. These are 5-year programs that are offered to early career researchers who are up to 6 years out of their PhD. And as well as the funding that they receive, they're also put on what's called a RAD fellowship program, which is a development program that supports the researcher with things like presentation techniques, with resilience training, with how to sort of maximize your performance. So as I mentioned earlier, all kind of informed by the world of Formula One. So it's very important to us in the charity that we are continuing to work with our researchers, that we don't just fund them, that we continue to develop them as people. And given the success of the fellowship program, and as our charity is moving forward, Race Against Dementia was keen to kind of expand its initiatives, looking at what we're now calling teaming up to drive out dementia. So working in partnership with the Rosetrees Trust, and Vin will come on and talk a little bit more about how we're working with that charity. But rather than just backing individuals through our fellowship program, we really identified a need to back more than just the individual. If you think of Formula One, you've got a Formula One driver, and obviously you can invest a lot into that driver, but really it's the whole team behind that driver that are leading to the success of that race. So we want to back an entire team of dementia researchers. And very much with the fellowship program, we don't just see this as a funding opportunity, we very much see this as a development opportunity for that team. And piggybacking on the program that we run for our fellows, we'd very much expect that people who are successful, researchers who are successful as part of this program, would have the opportunity to join in some of these RAD development opportunities. And that could be particularly useful for perhaps some of the less experienced members of that team who are successful. So just passing over to Vin, who is from the Rosetrees Trust, and he's going to talk through a little bit more on the specifics of the program.
Thanks, Lydia. So we're delighted to be partnering with Race Against Dementia on this call. So a little bit about Rosetrees. Some of you may know about us. We've been funding medical research in the UK for over 35 years, and we've been funding at most of the major institutions and universities. And we fund across the clinical disease spectrum, but we also have a particularly strong focus on dementia research, and we've been funding this for a number of years. And then the opportunity came to join up and collaborate with Race Against Dementia on this really exciting program. So we thought it would be a good opportunity for us to work with a dedicated charity and to use our networking and infrastructure to help promote the call and process the applications. So the call is a £3.75 million program in the first year. And what we're trying to do, as Lydia said, is to identify the UK's most promising dementia research leaders. Now, these can be at any career stage, early, mid, or more established. And we're looking for ideas that are perhaps slightly more innovative, that maybe have not been funded or may not get funding at this point. The awards are for 750,000 over 5 years, and they can be used to recruit new staff, support current staff, or purchase appropriate equipment and research costs and other running costs. And as Lydia pointed out, training and guidance will be available to all the winning applicants. So the application process is a two-stage process. So initially, you can submit what we call expressions of interest, preliminary applications at our Rosetrees FlexiGrant portal. You can see the hyperlink there. And that window is currently open with the deadline for submissions on September the 4th. And we will then be selecting those applicants who can then submit a full application, and they will be notified week commencing October 30th. The deadline for the full submission is December the 18th, and then there will be an external review process and a panel meeting to select the winning applications. And we hope to announce those awards on May 2024. So all preliminary and full applications will be assessed by our panel, and that panel will be chaired by Professor John O'Brien at Cambridge. And as I said, the full applications will then be sent for specialist external peer review and then assessed by the panel.
I think at that point we can stop sharing. That's sort of the broad details, overview of each organisation, and we'll pass back to Adam.
Thank you, Lydia. So, of course, regular people who listen to the podcast or follow our service will know that we love working with Race Against Dementia. You've been on the podcast so many times, and the fellows have come and talked about how amazing the programme is. With that in mind, who do you want to win the Formula One World Championship this year?
Well, we were just actually at the British Grand Prix at the weekend, so it's a very fitting question. Not so related to dementia, but
no,
obviously. But we were very delighted. We have a new ambassador for our charity as well, the actor Florence Pugh, and she was at the Grand Prix at the weekend, supporting our cause. And we continue to see the benefits, I suppose, of being an official partner, charity partner of Formula One, and hopefully the winning team of this programme can get involved in some of the Formula One activities that we're very lucky to have the opportunity of.
And I think that's one of the great things that I know I've talked much about in the past about the fellowship programme is taking that innovative approach and new ideas to training researchers. We've just had a meeting earlier this week talking about how researchers could really benefit from things like acting lessons, because giving a presentation on stage and presenting like that, you might get far more advice from an actor than you would from another researcher, and bringing different people into the program is something I know you do with teams and with coaches from Formula One.
Yeah, we do. So, I mean, it's an interesting insight, and presentation skills is really important on the program because obviously researchers are, constantly presenting their research, whether that's to apply for funding or to communicate their science. And then, as you say, we work with various different coaches, and particularly a performance organisation called HINSA, who work with Formula One drivers on how you can make sort of life choices to perform at your best ability. So it's just things that you might not otherwise think about. We don't think about these things in our daily lives. We get caught up in our day-to-day job, and so it's really giving our researchers that opportunity to just come away from the lab, come away from their research for like a short period of time, do some training, and then apply it back to their science as they move forward. And with this Teams initiative, we very much hope and expect that we'll be able to continue some of this support, and actually in different ways as well, because if there's a team of 3 or 4 researchers, if we can offer them a training opportunity all together, some of that training actually can run across all of them, not just the individuals. And so, yeah, we're very much quite excited actually about the prospect of being able to train up a whole team of dementia researchers at one time.
We've talked about it, I mean, on the podcast, it came up last year, that show's available. And we had Dan from Hinster give an amazing presentation for us last year as well with my iStart hat on. And that's available to watch back. And it's brilliant, this idea of coaching versus mentoring as two different things. And that I love that. That whole idea. Let me get into some of the questions, because some of these are mine and some were people sent them in advance, so we'll get through them. The tricky bit will be reading through and making sure I don't ask questions you've already answered. So detailed overview of the program, Grant. I think you've done that. Brilliant. What I think is a question that's come up several times from people is this: there's an understanding out there that Race Against Dementia only funds basic research, basic science. Could you clarify exactly what teams? Because you get quite a lot of people now where they might be, because you mentioned dementia prevention on the call. And of course, prevention can go into looking at lifestyle factors or exercise or diet or health disparities and things like this, which we know are all potentially impactful, or air pollution. Just exactly what are you looking for in terms of the research? I don't know who's best to take that.
I've talked a lot. Shall I pass to Vin?
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, so I think we are trying to make the call as open as we can. So research into prevention, as you say, dietary, lifestyle, these can be impactful, and these would certainly fall within the remit of the call. We are, of course, interested in basic mechanisms of disease. I think these are fundamental to understanding potential new treatments. We're also interested in new diagnostics and how they could be developed and applied. So I think that those are the key areas that we're really interested in. Of course, any new potential treatments that people might want to be testing, either preclinically or in whatever scenario, new therapies. These are the four main areas that we're interested in within the remit of the call.
So new diagnostics, that could include imaging, fluid biomarkers, but also, I don't know, technology, wearables, things like that is obviously a hot area in dementia research right now.
Yes, absolutely. So I think we recognize that it's a broad area, but I think as I said, I think we wanted to make this call as open as we possibly could. It was the first year that we were running it, so we're absolutely open to those suggestions: wearables, sensor technology, things like that could be used as diagnostic tools or aids.
And so just to clarify, because I know you've got that two-stage application process, which really helps people not spend a massive amount of time on an application that is irrelevant. Would you, if somebody has an idea and they're not quite sure if that's going to be suitable, would you rather them drop you a line over email or something like that, or do you want them to put in the LOI based on what they've got?
No, I think it makes sense for them to drop us a line, and if we need any clarification, we can just jump on a very quick call. We're always happy to jump on a call just to clarify whether or not that area falls within the remit. I think it makes sense for the applicants and for ourselves just to make sure that the subject area is fundable.
Yeah, and especially as there's two organisations working together here, so that's happened in the last few weeks. Is one of us has identified a project that we're not sure, and then we can just put our heads together and go back to the applicant with a clear answer.
So ultimately, is that decision sits with RAD, I guess, does it, Lydia?
Well, RAD is funding the programme, so it'll be through our fundraising that we are able to support this process. But we're very lucky that Rosetrees is running this entire programme for us, running the selection process. And also, as Vin said, they have, they've supported over 2,000 projects in the medical research world, so they've got the expertise in that really kind of, in the process and in the types of support that they've given in the past. So we very much trust their view, and as I say, it's a partnership, and I think it's been a very successful one, and I hope it will lead to some really interesting science that we can support.
I think that's ticked. I can go down and tick several questions from this list. I mean, what would this is a question? What would you see as the main goals of the research of this particular research project? I mean, is this just adding into RAD's wider sphere?
For Race Against Dementia, yeah, I mean, I think we're a relatively young charity, and we have big ambitions. And it's been, as I explained, we started off with the fellowship, and the fellowship is still very much our core program, and we want to continue to expand our opportunity to fund fellows. So this is not an alternative to that by any means, but it's very much, I suppose, as we're growing and developing, teams felt like the natural progression. So I think the goal for us is to expand our research portfolio to be able to achieve a situation where we're training entire teams. Like, we're quite excited by the idea of being able to work with a whole team of researchers, and even looking at perhaps looking at the way that lab has been designed. If you went into a Formula One garage, the meticulation, like how accurate and how much detail goes into like making sure every tool, every piece of equipment is labeled and in the right place and everybody knows where it is. And I'm sure that there'll be really interesting things that a whole team could go in and look at that environment and come away and reassess the way that they have set up their lab. So
what a cool idea. So would you send some researchers off to, say, Red Bull to see how they organize their garage so they could go back and reorganize labs?
Yeah, and we absolutely should. And one of our fellows, Dr. Claire Durrant, who's based up at the University of Edinburgh, did have a tour of one of the teams. I think it might have been at Red Bull, actually. And after she came back to Edinburgh, she did exactly that. She reassessed the way she had set up her lab. And it's just those little insights that you wouldn't otherwise have thought about. Because, these are two worlds that live on different tram lines. They don't cross. They, naturally they don't cross. So the kind of opportunity, we think, could be quite interesting with this initiative.
I love that holistic approach. I worked in NHS improvement before. We led some work around heat mapping to put tags on people to see where doctors, nurses, allied health professionals spent time when they were on a ward. How much was spent at bedside and how much was spent at nursing station or elsewhere across the hospital, to see where that time was. And I love that idea, and that RAD takes this holistic approach to everybody. And Teams has come up before, because I think one of the issues with fellowships, isn't it, is that they it's great that you provide such support and training for an individual fellow, but then if everybody else in that team that they work around doesn't have that same level of training and support, it won't benefit as much. Although I guess one would hope that they'll then pass that on to their colleagues. Let me take the next question. So who is eligible for the grant? I think you already said that. So this is UK based researchers, so anywhere across the UK. And the next question was, what career stage are you expecting people at? Because obviously I know in your fellowships that you want them to be quite early on post PhD. Where do you see this landing in terms of career stage as to who should apply?
I can take that one, Adam. So I think that, again, with the theme of openness, we are looking at applications from people at different career stages. So this is not specifically aimed at any one group. So we're happy to take applications from early, mid-career or established academics. I think the focus is on the idea. We're looking at the approach, how they might use the funding to either build a new team or develop an existing team to add a component that's currently lacking. And I think that the main idea is, which are the best ideas that can actually introduce a step change in the field. So even if we're considering sort of senior postdocs on a fixed term contract, that's a discussion that we can have about whether they would want to apply with a good support team around them, and perhaps use this funding as a stepping stone to other fellowships. And this would allow them to get their first independent position or transition into independence.
Because that's where that little bit of imposter syndrome kicks in, doesn't it? Particularly with a new grant like this, which might be seen, well, I think everything RAD does, particularly seen as prestigious. But I think when a grant comes in that's quite a little bit of money, that I think earlier career researchers are a little bit put off and think, oh no, that's not for me. I wouldn't get that. But so you're saying people shouldn't take that view. If you're an early career researcher that's still only a couple of years out of your PhD, maybe doing your junior fellowship, you should still consider applying for this one. It's not just for the senior people.
I think that we'd be please drop us a line. And I think the key thing is that if you are a junior researcher with a great idea, that what we're looking for there is that you have a team of mentors and supervisors who, this might be your first major application, that you surround yourself with the right people that then give the application a bit more weight. And in that case, I think we're very happy to take any inquiries. I think we're not restricting it at any point. We just want to make sure that if you are in that position, that you have the right team in place to support you through the program.
Perfect. You touched there on a little bit of a technical detail about fixed-term contracts. We know that many of these grants might require you to have a contract which is at least the duration of the grant you're applying for, which is often a barrier to application. Where does this sit on that technicality?
Yeah, so I think that there would be scope. So if you're on a fixed term contract and so the rules at your institution might preclude you or prohibit you from applying, what you can then do is name yourself as a researcher who'd be funded on this application. The PI may have to be one of the academics in your institution or one of the mentors. You would then go on as a co-I, and then if the rules at your institution prohibit you from actually submitting an application, from our perspective, if you're on a fixed term contract, you could apply for funding to cover your salary at the point where your contract ends to continue your research or to continue at that institution. But I just don't know what the rules are at different institutions.
Yeah, it's often, isn't it? I think people often kind of think that the issue here sits with the funder, but it's not. It's the institution that won't let you apply for that. So the way around that then, so if anybody's got a contract that perhaps finishes toward the end of next year, if your institution lets you apply, then you're happy to take the application. But if their institution doesn't, people should explore having a co-PI. And then that you brought me to my next question, which is, of course, this talks about teams. And I know in the information you talked about hiring postdocs and PhD students, maybe some lab research assistants and things. Can you cover your own salary in this grant?
Yes, if necessary. So I think what we'd be looking for is applicants with the kind of potential that they would be applying for independent fellowships. And what they can then do is use this grant perhaps to give them 1 or 2 years of funding, build a team around that, and then in that sort of 2-year window, perhaps submit applications for fellowships. But in principle, yes, they could use the salary. They could use the funding for their own salary.
I suppose it's within that envelope of funding, isn't it? If you're funding yourself from this grant, of course, the idea of how much of a postdoc time you can take on might be limited.
Correct.
Okay, next question. You've talked about the evaluation criteria. You also mentioned that you're looking for particularly creative and new stuff. So is that particularly important to Race Against Dementia, that this isn't repeating or doing something that's lost out there, that new creative ideas are particularly welcomed?
Yeah, I think the sentiment of the charity is that, we want to take risks, and that's how we believe we're going to, lead to new and interesting ideas and breakthroughs. So novel approaches is definitely something that we would look at, and we are open to projects that have an element of risk. Obviously, we then also expect that there would be a sort of certain level of contingency within that. So it might be that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vin, but the overall ambition might be quite a high risk proposal, but the applicant has thought about contingency plans, kind of being aware of that. It's a 5-year program, And so we expect that, you know, for the science to be considered throughout the whole program. We don't want to start backing something that is so high risk and there isn't a plan B. That means that, you know, it limits how much can be funded over the 5 years. But yes, in sentiment, Race Against Dementia is open to new ideas and new approaches, and I think that's one of the benefits of the charity being this way it's set up, is that, you know, we can be a little bit more maverick than perhaps others.
Absolutely. And there's so much cool stuff going on now. I was reading yesterday about the new fastball study out of Bath and Bristol, and the 3D bioprinting brains and structures in Birmingham. There's so many new ideas that you could see would lend themselves to this call. Is this only for new grants? If you have an ongoing project that's already made a start, could you apply to add to an ongoing project, or is this only for new stuff? I finally found a question that you couldn't just immediately go, yeah, I saw that thinking on your face. I'm glad I asked one.
So we do have a question on the application form about how this application would integrate with ongoing research in the lab. So it's got to be a new project, but it can certainly be tangential to something that's going on. But I think that we would need to see evidence that this is going perhaps taking the research in a complementary but new direction. It's integrating nicely with what's already going on, but it can't just be an extension, if you like, of, you know, adding more N numbers, or, you know, of something that already exists. There's got to be a new element to it.
That makes sense. I mean, we see that all the time, don't we? That a new idea drops out of an existing program.
Yeah.
You just haven't got the time or the resources to pursue that. So they get dropped and often don't get back up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So that's that one. International researchers, only, but does that preclude you having international collaborations?
No. So I think that the UK, the hosting institution needs to be UK. The primary site of research has to be UK, but you can have international collaborators. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another question was ongoing. So how would RAD and Rosetrees have an ongoing relationship with the study once it's started? Do you have very specific reporting mechanisms? I know you've already mentioned that you'll include the team as part of that wider review work.
Yeah, very much so. So we can talk about Rosetrees, but the RAD will have the relationship because we do continue to work with our researchers throughout the whole 5 years of their fellowship, and in this case, the support. And then from Race Against Dementia's point of view, we have an annual review process with one of our scientific advisors, which is reported back to our trustees. But Vin and the Rosetrees team are also managing the kind of review process as they would any of their medical research grants, which is fantastic from our perspective. So I'll let him mention.
Yeah, I mean, so generally what we would do is have just an interim progress report. That's just essentially a checkbox and a little bit of text just to update us on how things are going. And one of the things that is unique about Rosetrees, and I think also RAD subscribe very much to this line of thinking, is that we love to meet the people that we fund. We don't want to give this funding and then disappear for 3-5 years and then come back. We really like to meet people either in person or on Zoom and just catch up. It really helps us to build a relationship with the researchers. It's not overbearing in any way, but it just helps to build up a personal rapport. And also, you know, one of the key aspects of Rosetrees is that we like to fund projects in continuation. So if a project is making really, really good progress, we like to know about that and then consider putting more funding into that. So we're not necessarily going to stop after 3 years. And so that's why meeting people is a key element of that. So it's all done in a very, very informal and friendly way.
Okay, so just a reminder to anybody that's watching that there's still a chance for you to ask questions as well. If you're watching on Twitter, you can reply to the tweet below and we'll pick that up. And if you're watching on YouTube, just post that in the comments and we'll make sure that that question is answered. However, I think we're doing so well that nobody could possibly have questions because we're already answering them as we go. Next one was around, can you build anything into the grant to include knowledge translation and sharing research findings? And is there an expectation that that you'll share data that the project produces and go with the open access publications?
Yeah, no, I think that that's going to be one of the things that we'll be looking at. I think in terms of funding that, we will cover that, or there will be allowances for that as well. So it would be good. I think in the full application at this preliminary stage, I don't think that information is necessary, but in the full application, I think we will sort of put some notes about open access publication and knowledge sharing and transfer.
So some of these questions are so similar, but this one was, how does Race Against Dementia and Rosetrees provide ongoing support and mentorship to grant applicants? Could you maybe just talk a little bit about that, Lydia? Because I know we've got the fellowship podcast, but I don't know if this will differ in any way.
Yeah, so we would very much like to continue some of the support that we're giving to our fellows, to the members who are selected as part of this Teams initiative, because we believe it's working well. So each researcher is currently matched up with a mentor, and that mentor is very likely to be from a sort of technology background, perhaps someone from Formula One, even somebody from sort of finance and private equity. Some of our researchers even have two mentors because they have slightly different backgrounds. And what we believe that does is a sort of disruptive relationship that makes our researchers just think differently about some of the challenges that they're facing. And the mentoring relationship means that our researchers generally sort of meet up, perhaps in person once a year, perhaps do a phone call or a Zoom once every other month is what we sort of advise. And it gives them a sounding board of somebody outside of their, medical world to discuss challenges, problems. And it also opens up a big network. And this is drawing actually on what Vin was saying earlier about the Rosetrees network and, being part of that. And I also believe that, having the Rosetrees network and the Race Against Dementia networks could be really powerful for these researchers, because they'll be introduced to lots of interesting people that challenge the way they're thinking, that, give them new ideas, give them new connections. And I believe that that's, and at RAD we believe that that's a pretty powerful way to progress research. The only other point I didn't pick up on earlier, but in terms of meeting in person, RAD hosts an annual what we call the summer school. So all of our fellows meet at Silverstone Racecourse in 2 weeks' time, which is an opportunity for all the fellows, because they are international and based in different institutions, to come together. And that's an opportunity for them to train, but also collaborate. And actually, what we found from last year's meetup was 2 of our researchers actually then got together and did a joint application for some additional funding, which they were successful at. So it's really enabling, I suppose. Vin made this point earlier, and I think that's really the main thing we want to get across, is it's not just the funding, but it's the continuation of support and kind of building into this community that we already have to make our research as successful as possible.
You always get that.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Adam, I was just going to add, at Rosetrees, we love kind of scientific matchmaking. And so because we fund not just in dementia, but, across different scientific and medical disciplines, and a lot of people network within their own kind of sphere. They don't get exposed to researchers from, mathematics, computer. I know research is becoming more interdisciplinary now, but, it could be that somebody's working in a completely different clinical area that is doing something that would actually complement you, or you're looking for skills in that. And that's something that we can do, because we talk to all of the people that we fund. We're in a great position to say, oh, right, we know somebody who can help you with that. Let's put you together. And we've done that on many occasions. So that's part of the kind of informal support that we continue to provide once the grant has started.
We've had some of the RAD fellows on the podcast this week talking about Mauro Malpetti's been on there, and we've had lots of interactions with RAD fellows who contribute a great deal to our service, and you always get this sense that it is a bit of a family. They kind of they work together on different things, and when you join RAD, you kind of join that family, which is that incredibly supportive community, and great to have Rosetrees contributing into that as well, who have the same impeccable reputation for delivering on quality and really caring about the individuals, because I think it's very easy to just distribute funding, isn't it? But then I think keeping in touch and caring about the individuals and the careers of the people that are doing this is what will make a massive difference to long-term support for these research fields, because we know so many people leave at that problem we have with the leaky pipeline.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
being able to provide that support you do is amazing. We haven't had any questions, but we have had a few comments saying, well done, RAD, you're a great organization. So that's good. Anybody that really loves RAD, what I am going to do, I'm going to flag up on the screen at the bottom a ticker there that says, if you want to contribute to Race Against Dementia, you can go to raceagainstdementia.com and make a donation. And that will find its way into research. Are there any final points that you'd want to make? There was one other question, which is this going to be a one-off? There was somebody who didn't think they were quite going to be ready or didn't have time this year to put an application together, but they were a bit concerned that if they didn't do it now, this was a one-off thing. Do you think this will be repeated, or do you just not know yet?
We just don't know. We very much hope so, obviously, but we don't know because it's new and because we are hoping to fund up to 5 teams, which is the £750,000 for each team. So I would like to think so, but it's the sort of thing we will obviously review. And we thought it would be important, rather than use the funding to have one new team every year for 5 years, we thought it'd be important to kick off with hopefully 5 teams up front, because then it adds to this community, and we're giving this opportunity. So I hope so. Our fellowship program is an example of a program that did start off with just 3 fellows, 3 opportunities, and it's continued to grow to 17. So as far as RAD is able to fundraise and bring in new support, the more we can do. And so far, the partnership with Rosetrees has been hugely successful. So we very much hope that will continue.
Brilliant. And I'm sure they would have asked this themselves, but are existing RAD fellows eligible to apply?
Because actually a couple of our RAD fellowship, our RAD fellows are coming to the end of their support. Yeah. There's nothing to stop them.
Okay. So let's just, I think we're coming to the end now, but let's just recap then. So this is 750,000 over 5 years. Apply through Rosetrees. You've got the initial letter of intent, which is a short process, and then go on to full application. The full applications are December, did you say? And the letters can remind us of those dates. What's the initial LOI date?
So I think the initial deadline for the EOIs is September the 4th. Okay, and then the applicants who are selected for the full application will be towards the end of October, I think week commencing.
30th, 30th of October.
Yeah. Okay,
then
great.
That will then close on the 18th of December. So that's the window for the full application.
So quite a short window, but you're well known for having a kind of nice application process.
Yeah, I think that the key point there is a lot of the information that you've already submitted in the initial EOI will be taken forward and into the full application. It'll just be some additional information, particularly focusing on methodology and experimental detail.
Okay, so pretty much everything except perhaps care research was on the table. So not. But fundamental science, dementia prevention, biomarkers were particularly of interest, particularly anything that's a little bit new and clever and perhaps not being done elsewhere. That can be an add-on to an existing project, but it can't be part of an existing study. If in doubt, reach out to Vin to ask a question. And Vin, how can people get hold of you?
So you can get hold of me at the Rosetrees Trust. So my email is vrajkumar@rosetreescio.net. It's on our website, and there should be a pop-up that takes you straight to the RAD Rosetrees call, and you can find all the contact details there.
Okay, great. So reach out if you're not sure about either how you make up the team, because of course we did talk before about this being to fund a team of people to work with you, ideally not covering your salary, but if it needs to, it can, if you don't have funding for the entire program. But of course, you've got to factor that into the wider envelope of the 750,000. Obviously, if you're funding your own salary as well, it's going to leave less money for the wider team. And but again, ask questions if you
absolutely
and once you're funded, you'll become part of the RAD family and benefit from that massive extra support and mentoring program that comes in. We've had a late question, which is a good one actually, because I think I touched on this earlier, but we didn't really get into the detail of it. Is, can you talk more about the review process and the criteria for the LOI, and if successful, is there a rebuttal for external review?
So the criteria, so in terms of the initial application, obviously we're anticipating quite a large volume at that initial stage, and that will have to be reduced. So the panel will be looking at those applications and selecting the most competitive ones that fit the remit, and there will be a meeting to discuss those, and there will be, you know, scores and comments. At that stage, there won't be scope for rebuttal, but there will be feedback provided to all the applicants. There will be scope for rebuttal with regards to the full application.
Okay, and on that initial pass of the expressions of interest, is that still the the John O'Brien panel?
Yeah, so it'll be the same panel that looks at the initial applications and the full applications. The full applications will be obviously supplemented with the peer reviews as well.
I suppose, is there a challenge with that if you have such a broad range of potential research coming in from basic biology or stem cell work to digital biomarkers, how do you create a review panel that's well enough informed to be able to really look at all that variety?
No, that's a good question. And so we have a panel of 12 that covers these areas. So when we put those themes into the call, we realized that we had to have a panel that could cover those applications. And then obviously in terms of the full applications, they would then be sent out to specialist peer reviewers in those fields that would then be assessed by the panel. But we do cover, in terms of prevention, we cover the clinical, the basic science. It's all covered by the members of the panel.
It's quite challenging, isn't it, when you might suddenly get something about artificial intelligence or machine learning that nobody really understands. But having a panel to look at that, so that's great. So initially, you've got 12 broad people who you're confident can at least do the shortlist, and then you'll bring in expert review for the specific call if needed. Perfect, and there'll be rebuttal on the full applications, not on the letters of interest, no, your expressions of interest, but you will give feedback on those.
Yeah,
brilliant. Last chance for any questions, because I think we didn't quite use up our full hour, but I feel like we've covered quite a lot. So just a reminder again, applications are in October. I should have had this printed out. I didn't. I printed out everything, and that's the one thing I didn't print out was the deadlines. They'll in the show notes that go with the recording, you can see this. If you are worried that you missed anything today, don't worry. This is all being recorded. It'll be available on our YouTube channel as well for you to watch back, and we'll post this onto the Dementia Research website. If you missed the chance to ask a question, reach out to Vineeth. He gave his email address earlier, but we'll also post that in the comments below, and we'll give the details on the RAD website as well, should you want to get to know more about Race Against Dementia, because I think you've got fellowship applications open in Australia at the moment as well.
Australia, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're hoping to have another 1 or 2 fellows in Australia in the coming year.
Is there anything else that you could tease? Have you got any teaser for the new fellowships opening soon? Anything that you can't confirm, but you could maybe hint at?
Well, we are. So this year marks Sir Jackie Stewart's 50th anniversary of when he won his third and final World Championship, and then he subsequently retired from Formula One. So to celebrate that, he has launched what's called the Ignition Fund, which is a fund of money to back kind of side projects, interesting things that come up during research. So we'll have to do another one of these, Adam, to go into a bit more detail on that. I'm
Brilliant. Is that open now as well?
That there is information on our website. You can apply. It's a much shorter process. It's just an internal process through Race Against Dementia, and the amount of money of the opportunity is therefore smaller. But yes, have a look at the RAD website under our research, and you'll find out some more details.
I missed that. That will be on the Dementia Researcher website within the next hour as well. So if you can find out details about that there. What about Vin? Is there anything, because obviously Rosetrees works with lots of different partners, any dementia researchers watching or people working in neurodegeneration, is there anything else on your books at the moment that might be of interest?
So we have just so we will have a project grant round opening in November, mid-November, early December. So we don't know quite what the flavor of that project grant is. It's currently under review, and we've got a strong history of funding neurodegenerative diseases. So it's quite possible that we'll certainly be looking for applications in generally across that field. With regards to dementia, I think we might sort of refine the parameters on which applications we're going to be looking at, because obviously we're involved with the call with RAD, so we don't want to sort of get applications through both streams. So I think what we'll do is we'll have more information on there probably later in the summer. That round is due to open mid-November or so, and we traditionally get quite a few applications in that area, so definitely.
Fantastic. Well, without any more questions, I think that's probably all we've got time to today. I hope the information that we've provided has inspired you to decide that this application and this grant is for you, and that you can make an application. I know with funding for 4 teams, it was 4 teams, right? 4 teams, 5. With funding for 5 teams, of course, and the average. So, there's plenty of opportunity there. This isn't like you're competing for one place. There are 5 teams going to be funded, which means that you definitely, if you're unsure, really consider applying. And if you're not quite sure if you're the profile of your team or your research idea is relevant, please do reach out to me. Thank you very much to my brilliant guests, Lydia Beaton and Dr. Vineeth Rajkumar from Rosetrees and Race Against Dementia. It's been great to have you, and good luck to anybody out there who's applying.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you.